When I used to get to the city and they're doing their final approach or they're circling, there was a bit of excitement then. I mean, it gives you a really different perspective looking down at the city you're about to rob from 10,000 feet. I didn't plan to do 21 robberies in a year. It just worked out that way.
April 2nd, 1987. The Flying Bandit is in Regina, Saskatchewan. It's just another typical business trip. 2 years ago, he robbed a bank in this city for $3,000. Today, he's come back to rob it again. This is what he looks like when he robs the bank for $10,800. And this is what he looks like a few moments later, after he pulls off his disguise. After lunch at a hotel, he puts on a different disguise, robs another bank for almost $10,000. And that afternoon, he's catching a flight back home. It's been a good day. 2 banks, $20,000, and a clean getaway. And with any luck, he'll be home in time for a nice dinner with his wife and family.
As bank robbers, he's the best that I've ever seen.
George Schneider is an undercover officer with the Ontario Provincial Police.
He would travel in first class all the time. He would be impeccably dressed in the best suits. As he approached a bank, that's what you would see, a businessman carrying an attaché case, impeccably dressed.
In Canada, he used the name Robert Whiteman, but his real name was Gilbert Galvan. He was an American citizen with a long criminal record in the United States that started when he was just 17 years old. In 1984, he escaped from jail, and a friend smuggled him across the border into Canada. He met a Canadian woman who knew nothing about his past. They got married and had 2 children. This is where they settled, Pembroke, Ontario, about an hour and a half northwest of Ottawa. When he wasn't robbing banks, the Flying Bandit used to do a little fishing on the Ottawa River. The couple lived in his very ordinary bungalow. Whiteman told his wife he was working for a Calgary-based company as a courier of stocks and bonds. He carried off the deception perfectly. But he did have a close call one day when his wife discovered a small fortune in his pants pocket.
She says, I need $5 for the taxi. And I said, well, just, it's in the pants. Just reach in there and grab it. And she pulled out the money clip, and there's a 20, and, you're flicking through it looking for a 5 or a 10, and there's 18 $1,000 bills there, and she just about had a heart attack. I explained to her that it was 2 paychecks, a bonus, and she's got the money in hand, she's looking at it, and she goes, you got to put it in the bank.
And what'd you do?
Put it in the bank.
Often, Mrs. Whiteman would drive her husband to the Pembroke airport to see him off on one of his frequent business trips. Arriving in Toronto, businessman Robert Whiteman would switch to Air Canada for the next leg of his trip. He liked to travel first class, and he was an enthusiastic member of Aeroplan. At one point, he had 160,000 miles built up. The tools of his trade, his 2 handguns, and his disguises were in his suit bag. He knew the security system, and he knew that his checked luggage would never be X-rayed on a domestic flight. He flew from one end of the country to the other, robbing banks in every province except PEI and Newfoundland. In 3 years, he robbed almost 50 banks, a Canadian record, and he never fired a shot.
My only motivation for life of crime is money. I mean, I was fully cognizant of what I was doing. I understand the concept of right and wrong. I did it for money, period.
Police say that the Flying Bandit was one of the most gifted bank robbers they'd ever come across, and that if he had stuck to robbing banks, he'd probably still be in business today. He was that good at it. But then he met a man who introduced him to jewelry, the Fat Man.
Hello? Yeah? Larry, we're doing it tomorrow. All right?
This is the Fat Man, Tommy Craig. According to police, he is the fence in the Ottawa area.
No. Mike's in jail. Yeah.
Tommy and some of his close friends drive Chrysler Fifth Avenues, and they've been affectionately nicknamed the Chrysler Gang. Tommy is known as a connoisseur of jewelry. He buys it and sells it, and the police say he doesn't ask too many questions about where it comes from.
Well, they've always accused me of anything going wrong in this city. But I'm just a small smoke in a big wheel.
What do you do?
I run bars, like strip bars.
But you really know jewelry.
I know jewelry. I sell quite a bit of it.
Where do you get it from?
Wholesalers. Toronto, Montreal.
Wholesalers, as in legitimate wholesalers?
Yes.
You're sometimes described by the police as the main man, the fence in Ottawa.
They have called me that, yes. But I don't know why they branded me that, because I've never been convicted of it.
You got nice rings on your hands, a beautiful bracelet on your wrist, diamonds all over the place.
Well, if you're gonna sell it, you gotta flash it.
And how much would that be worth?
It's appraised for $62,000.
You have other beauties on the other hand.
I have my bracelet, which I just changed. I used to have a Tommy, but I'm giving it to my son, Timmy.
Encrusted with diamonds.
Yeah.
What are you carrying on you right now in jewelry?
135,000.
The Flying Bandit heard about the Fat Man and wanted to meet him. The two men eventually became friends, very good friends, and they used to fly all over Canada together.
We flew the aeroplane in Air Canada. Like we've always said, the only way to fly is Air Canada. Keep the money in Canada. We always went first class. He loved to fly, Robert. The stewardess loved him. He was just a great guy. Everybody loved the man.
The Fat Man and the Flying Bandit. You were partners? Partners in crime?
Oh, no. No, you can't say that.
During their trips, the Fat Man and the Flying Bandit usually dropped in at the local Burke store to admire the jewelry. Burke's has some of the most expensive diamonds in the country.
Generally, they have an estate section, and that's people that are selling family heirlooms or whatever. And they're just huge stones, and like in one area, like just one section of a case, there's just an enormous amount of valuable merchandise.
With a partner standing guard, the Flying Bandit would clean out the cases with the most valuable jewelry and then take off before anyone could sound the alarm. He did half a dozen Burke stores with the same kind of careful planning that characterized his bank robberies. He and his partner were in and out in seconds. No shots were ever fired. His biggest job was in Vancouver. It took only a minute and a half. They cleaned out $1.2 million in jewelry, the biggest ever armed robbery in that city.
I flicked the briefcase open, and the light from the lamp, it just hit the diamonds the right way, and the whole ceiling just sparkled. I mean, it took my breath away. Like, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was just like a million little rainbows on the ceiling there. Every one of them a little dollar sign, too.
But his partner made a serious mistake. Along with the disguises, he left behind the sawed-off shotgun, and it was traced back to the Fat Man in Ottawa.
We believe that the fence involved, known to us as the Fat Man, was the only person capable of handling the jewelry if in fact it came back to the city. And we believe that he had gotten the gun. So based on that, we started to keep track of who were all of his associates at that time.
There was no mistaking the association between Robert Whiteman and the Fat Man. He was driving the trademark Fifth Avenue of the Chrysler Gang. The police put Whiteman under surveillance in Pembroke. He seemed an unlikely suspect, a respectable married man. But when they checked into the pattern of his business trips, there was a perfect match with the jewelry robberies. On June 12 of 1987, the Flying Bandit got ready for his last business trip, robbery number 59. He flew to London, Ontario, where he robbed a bank of $22,000 and then flew home. His pregnant wife and child were waiting for him, but so were the police.
As he walked through the airport, two members of our tactical squad passed by him, one on either side, and grabbed him and put him down on the ground.
How did your wife react?
Well, she was stunned. Like, she thought it might have been a practical joke or something at first. I mean, like, she just, this isn't, this is a mistake. That's my husband. You obviously don't mean to arrest him.
But it was no mistake. The $22,000 from the London robbery was sitting in his briefcase. That was the first shock for Mrs. Whiteman. The second shock was finding out she was married to an alias.
She comes in and she sits down, and she looks at me and she goes, "Your name's not Robert Whiteman. You're not even Canadian." And I said, "Well, yeah, that's, that's true."
Do you have any remorse for what you did to her?
Well, I don't know if remorse is the word. There's a lot of feelings.
Well, tell me about those feelings.
That I loved her, that I provided, that to me that was my definition of a good husband.
Gilbert Galvan is currently serving time at the Collins Bay Penitentiary in Kingston, Ontario. After pleading guilty to a total of 59 armed robberies worth $2.5 million, he received a 20-year jail sentence. The sentence could have been a lot less. The authorities were offering deals if Galvan would name his partners and testify against them. But the Flying Bandit said no.
All he would have had to say was yes, and I should be sitting inside with him. Because they would have took his word, and the police would have charged me with fencing the jewelry. 9 out of 10 guys facing 20 years would have signed in a minute. Because he would have got, like we know, he would have got 8 years. All he had to do was sign his name.
All he had to do was point the finger at the
That's
fat
right.
man.
That's all he had to do, is point at me or point at anybody in particular, especially me. And he could have got only 8 years. He'd be out today.
But he didn't.
That's right. So what do I call a man like this? A friend.
Such a big guy, why can't you nail the fat man?
He's very smart, and fencing is a very difficult thing to deal with in this country. It's much easier to catch the thieves than it is to catch a fence.
For the record, Galvan says that his partners in crime were Americans, not Canadians. He won't name them, of course. His wife divorced him 2 years ago, but she and the children still visit occasionally. Their pictures are proudly displayed on the wall. And the money? The $2.5 million? The police say most of the loot is probably in a safe place, waiting for the day when the Flying Bandit gets out of jail. Galvan says he spent all the money. There's nothing left. Not a penny. With a straight face, you can say you have no money left?
I can say it with a straight face, and I can say it with one with a smile on it. I don't have any money.